My name's Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of Face to Face. And Face to Face is broadcast every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. Face to Face is a show that's designed to ask my guests the hard questions and give you, the viewers, the answers and information that you deserve to know. This morning on Face to Face, I have one of the top political reporters in the state of Connecticut, an individual that has won numerous awards in Alabama, and he's going to bring his perspective on what's going on here in the state of Connecticut towards this particular show. My guest this morning is no other than the political reporter for NBC Connecticut, Max Reiss. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Jonathan. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. All right. Max Reiss, you are a political reporter, so basically your job consists of what?
I'm the guy who's covering the governor. I'm covering Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy every day, covering pocketbook issues about taxes. You know, what are people going to be paying for different things, car taxes, things like that. And also when the General Assembly's in session, I'm there. Sometimes, you know, those late nights, 1, 2 in the morning, my wife doesn't like them very much, but that's what I get paid to do. Yeah, and then from time to time also, I'll kind of go outside the comfort zone, do other like larger topics as well, like the economy, business, things like that. And I've been doing that for the better part of 7 years now, and Connecticut is its own beast.
Right, and you recently came to Connecticut in 2014.
That's correct. I got here a little over a year ago, right as the governor's race between Tom Foley and Dan Malloy was really kind of reaching its peak.
Okay. Well, it's like you're the best person I could think of this morning to talk about many critical issues throughout the state of Connecticut.
We got a lot of stuff going on. We'll see if we can get it all in.
Okay. Let's get your perspective on the update of General Electric. There's been some talk over the past, this year actually, that General Electric may be considering leaving Connecticut, leaving their headquarters out of the state. Where do things stand at right now?
We're at a very interesting point, Jonathan. And the reason why is, this all started 4 months ago, and in the middle of June, as the budget was being crafted, and GE was kind of the loud cry saying about we don't want to pay higher taxes, or we don't want to have any kind of increased business tax, and the state basically raised tax on a number of different things, that like unitary reporting, which is them combining all the different reporting of their revenues and then paying taxes on that in Connecticut. They view that as a bad thing. We're at a very critical point now, because about a month ago, Jeff Immelt, the CEO of General Electric, said we will make a decision in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
And I think he meant fourth quarter kind of two ways, like the NFL fourth quarter, right? The football fourth quarter, but also the literal fourth quarter. We're in the fourth quarter of the financial year.
Yeah.
Wall Street's in the fourth quarter. And the reason why they would do that is so that way for the next round of revenue projections and quarterly filings and earnings reports, they can tell their shareholders and their stockholders, where are we going to be moving? Where are we going to be?
Right.
We thought it was going to come maybe October 1st or October 2nd. Here we are now, and it's October 12th. We don't know yet. Okay. So we could view that many different ways. Are they negotiating with the state? Are they negotiating with other states? Are they talking with other cities and towns? Are they maybe on the verge of a deal somewhere? We don't know the answer to that, but what we can assume is that they're still making their decision. They obviously aren't happy with Connecticut at this point. So, it'd be really interesting to see what happens over the next month as we approach December 31st. Where is GE going to be?
Where's some of the top destinations that they are most likely considering if they were if General Electric was to decide to move their headquarters and operation out of Connecticut? What would be some of the top areas?
That's a great question. It's kind of this Northeast mentality against Midwest against Southern mentality, where in the Northeast it is higher taxes up here, but at the same time, if you were to look at the rankings of top schools and top public resources, top municipal resources, it's in places like Connecticut and New York and Massachusetts, because there are higher taxes.
Right.
If you go to the Midwest, you go to the South, these are states like Indiana, Georgia, Texas, South Carolina, places that have really made an extra push in the last several years, really decade, to be a low tax environment, quote unquote corporate friendly environment. They have lower corporate taxes. They have lower property taxes. The state will give them huge tax incentives. We understand that Atlanta has been talked about as a big deal corporate headquarters for them. Indianapolis has been considered, but also just over the border in New York.
Yes.
You know, and that should scare a lot of people in Connecticut because it's so close. Where if you're, let's say you're an executive at GE, they employ 800 people, roughly a quarter, almost all of them are making over $200,000 a year. These are people that live in Fairfield, live in Ridgefield, live in Westport, they live in Greenwich, they live in Stamford. These are places that have very good public schools. They have great resources. If you're an executive who lives in Greenwich or Fairfield or Ridgefield or Reading, right? Good luck telling them you're going to be moving to Indianapolis. Good luck telling them you have to figure out where you're going to send your kid to high school now. You know, these are the conversations that are larger than just taxes. So New York is considered to be a potential front runner. We understand that there's an old IBM or PepsiCo campus in White Plains, if I'm not mistaken, or in Somers, New York. We call it Summers, they call it Somers. And that could be a possibility. And so one of these taxes, by the way, if I'm talking too long, feel free to tell me to stop. One of the taxes, this unitary corporate reporting, was pushed off for a year, right? It was supposed to go into effect fiscal 16. It's not going to go into effect till fiscal 17. Well, originally it was just going to go into effect immediately. So one of the things that Republicans were saying in the Capitol was, okay, well, that's just the New York site survey delay is what it is. We're just going to basically give them a year to go to New York and find somewhere. We don't know if that's going to happen, but we do know that GE has met with a lot of executives.
So the bottom line is General Electric or GE is going to have to make a decision, or they will make a decision before the end of this fourth quarter.
Yes, that's what we believe. And also, you know, to speak pragmatically about this for a moment, GE has given some warning signs that they're just going to leave no matter what. I mean, they've given some warning signs about that. So, and I think that there are a lot of sources in government that I've spoken to, I know this for a fact. There are a lot of people who are higher up in government who've said, look, they're trying to leave. It's apparent they're trying to leave. They sent 500 employees to Europe who are in one of their financial venture capital divisions. They sent another 200 or 300 employees from the Midwest to Canada. Well, if they thought it was good to do business in America, wouldn't they keep them there anyway? Instead, they're moving them to Europe. And then the federal government hasn't yet reauthorized what's known as the Export-Import Bank, which gives them a lot of capital involved in their exports and imports. What does GE do? Exports and imports. That's what they do. They make stuff, they send it overseas, they ship stuff back in to make a lot of those products, and then they ship them overseas. That cycle of doing business. Well, with that, it has nothing to do with Connecticut. Connecticut has no say in whether the Export-Import Bank, I mean, they have a say in our members of Congress, but that's only a small chunk of the 535 members who are in the House and Senate. So there are clear warning signs that GE is going to do something. I'd say maybe 50% going to leave, 50% going to stay. And we're going to know before the end of the year.
Would this hurt Connecticut towards its economic strength, or just towards its image strength, if a company like General Electric was to have their headquarters leave
I think that's a great question. And I think if you were to put it in these terms, you're talking about one huge corporation with 800 employees. That's a worldwide name that has offices all over the world. They do everything from investments to making jet engines. They just sold off a lot of their refrigeration, manufacturing stuff, but that's what they still do for the moment. So that, let's say 800 employees who make $250,000 or more leave, right? That looks bad.
It does.
That looks really bad, because that's sending a message of Connecticut's not a friendly place to do business. Okay, let's say 10 companies move to Connecticut and each hire 80 employees, and each of them makes $165,000 or $175,000 a year. We're talking about nearly the same thing. However, the optics are still bad, because you're talking about 10 smaller size companies. Compared to one gorilla. And then there's a real estate question in Fairfield and that area. Those are expensive homes. What will this do to property values in a place like that? What will this do to the grand list in Fairfield? They pay $2.1 million every year. How do you replace that? So there's a ripple effect that we don't know. And to your point, Jonathan, that's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good ripple effect.
Exactly.
So I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay. Well, let's get into the healthcare system. Over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk about, I guess, budget cuts towards the hospitals in the state of Connecticut. Where does things stand at currently right now with the hospital situation in our state?
So this is kind of a critical point between hospitals and the governor. They're in this kind of standoff. Mm-hmm. The most recent development was that on Friday, the governor released essentially $14.1 million in payments that went to a handful of hospitals, small handful, known as the small pool, is what they're known as, because these hospitals, you're talking about Day Kimball, Johnson Memorial, Bristol Hospital, smaller, and also in Milford as well. You're talking about smaller hospitals that are not part of a large conglomerate like a Yale New Haven or a Hartford Healthcare. Mm-hmm. And Hartford Healthcare is in the middle of an acquisition with a hospital in New London. So you have all of these factors. $14.1 million is going toward those smaller hospitals. These are hospitals that when you speak to their executives, they'll tell you that they depend on Medicaid dollars. Mm-hmm. Why do they depend on Medicaid dollars? These are funds that they get, they provide their service, then there's a federal match that comes in. Mm-hmm. In some cases, 9 to 1. Mm-hmm. So $1 turns into $9. Right. That's a big deal. That's, I mean, who wouldn't take that? Who wouldn't take that deal at Wall Street, right? If you guarantee me I can get a 90% return or 900%, I'm in.
Good investment.
And so the cuts that the governor made affect those federal Medicaid reimbursements. Mm-hmm. These hospitals provide a lot of Medicaid services. If you're someone who lives in Bristol and you're low income, you're going to go to Bristol Hospital, you're going to go to the emergency room, you're going to see a specialist there. Mm-hmm. And this strains their system. I'm using Bristol because we did speak to them last week. We spoke to their CEO, and he's very blunt about this. He goes, Max, we're a small hospital. Mm-hmm. We're not Yale New Haven. We're not Hartford. We're providing care to a much smaller group. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to have the kinds of resources that our Hartford and New Haven have. Well, that payment of hospitals was called a smokescreen, a political smokescreen by the Hospital Association, and it was referred to as a Band-Aid on a bone bruise. Right. I mean, those are harsh words coming from the Hospital Association that represents all healthcare in the state. And what it looks like is that the governor is trying to reshuffle the deck, as it were, about what is the role of hospitals in Connecticut and what should be the amount of money the state provides those hospitals. Kind of saying, he's using this argument about corporate compensation, how much an executive makes, $1 million salaries in some cases at Yale and Hartford. There aren't $1 million salaries at Bristol and in Milford, right, and at Day Kimball. Or if there are, that would be news to me, I should say. So it's this fight that's going back and forth. We don't really know how it's going to end. But what I understand is that the Democratic caucuses in the House and Senate are not happy with this. These are huge employers, especially Yale, New Haven, and Hartford. We call them Hartford Healthcare. They have partnerships all over the state. These aren't just insulated to small towns and city or big cities. So I think we're going to see some action this week. I'm not sure what, but it could be very possible we'll see some kind of infighting among Democrats, House and Senate side, going up against the governor. And it'll be interesting to see where this all shakes out.
Well, it looks like to me, Max, this could become, or if it has already become, a political issue between the Democrats and the Republicans, with the governor being in the middle of it to some degree. Also, is this impacting a lot of your social service agencies, actually having poor people have a more difficult time with their access to healthcare? Absolutely.
I mean, the fear is, whenever we talk about Medicaid, it's one of these things where people go, oh, Medicaid, that's poor, that's healthcare for the poor, it doesn't affect me. Well, it affects everybody. And I've had a lot of experience with this, covering it in more poorer states. When you cut Medicaid, what you're doing is you're cutting access to service. It cuts because look, at the end of the day, hospitals still have to make money. They can't just break even all the time. Right. If they're breaking even, then some of those more expensive patients can't get the services they need. So if there's an option, if you were to go to the community health center in New Haven, wonderful people down there doing the work that needs to be done. These are public sector doctors who are meeting with people in the community. In many cases, they don't speak English. And if they'll tell you that, I mean, they're gonna, no matter what, pretty much they're gonna see all these customers. But let's say that someone needs a dermatological appointment. right? Let's say they need they have some kind of skin issue, right? I'm not a doctor, but I'm just throwing this out there as a good example.
Yes.
If a doctor who sees a Medicaid patient at that community health center calls a colleague who's a private physician, has a private practice that does dermatology, if that patient who's on Medicaid is between someone who has Aetna or Cigna or another private insurance provider,
yes,
the private insurance provider is going to pay more for that procedure than Medicaid will.
Okay.
So that's a break-even point. That's a crucial decision. So you're going to see more Medicaid patients that are going to be potentially turned away, and these are poor Connecticut residents,
right?
And not just minority groups. You're talking about, it doesn't matter. You're talking about white, white, African American, Latino. You're talking about across the gamut. This isn't a racial thing. It's just that's just a fact of demographics.
But is it a class thing with the poor people locked into the Medicaid system that's going to impact?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And when you have that's exactly right, because you have a state that's expanded Medicaid. You have hundreds of thousands of people who are on this Medicaid system. And you could potentially see reduced care, especially at smaller hospitals, where those smaller hospitals, it may happen in an emergency room where they may not turn away a Medicaid patient,
yes,
but a Medicaid patient, in theory, could end up waiting longer in an emergency room or in urgent care than someone who doesn't have Medicaid, someone who has a private insurance plan.
Okay. Good way to end the first part of the show. We covered two, I guess, important topics, important issues in the state of Connecticut, and we're going to get back with some more important issues in part two of Face to Face. I'm learning a lot by having you on this show this morning, and I hope the viewers are also learning a lot.
I hope so as well. It's big stuff.
It is big stuff. All right. Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I am hosting Face to Face this morning with my guest, political reporter for NBC Connecticut, Max Reiss. So we're going to come back very shortly with part two of Face to Face. Thank you.
Loss of income, medical bills, car repairs. What does it mean to you and your family? A law firm is not about one person. It's about a well-coordinated, synchronized legal team that understands you and tells your story. I'm attorney Jeffrey Dressler for Dressler Strickland, injury lawyers. Hablamos su idioma, and this is what we do. 24/7, 11/22. That's 24/7, 11/22.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I'm hosting Face to Face this morning with my guest, political reporter for NBC Connecticut, Max Reiss. We're going to continue with part two of our conversation. Max Reiss, as a political reporter for NBC Connecticut, you cover a lot of statewide issues. The capital city is part of the state of Connecticut, obviously.
No, right.
And just over the past week or so, there's been some breaking news, some news making the front page of the Hartford Courant about this developer or owner, James Duckett of Black Diamond Consultant. What is this whole operation about now with these charges, and the city could be giving money towards certain companies. It's like a lot of issues are coming up over the past few days.
Yeah, and and to give full credit to some of my colleagues in the press, the Hartford Courant did some wonderful investigative work on this, where I'm sure there are some members in city government who are not happy about this investigative work.
Right.
But look, this is why a lot of us do our jobs, and they really have done a bang up job. I really can't stress that enough. But we've also talked with a lot of sources. We've done some of our own independent reporting on this. We did break the story about the Hartford Football Club a number of months ago by my colleague Brad Drazen. And what we learned in the last week is that James Duckett, this developer, former NFL player, has a troubled legal past. He's had and a troubled financial past, where he's had trouble paying his debts. He was convicted on a $200,000 embezzlement scheme about 16 years ago, which had to do with the way he describes it as one company that he was working for kept paying him. He shouldn't have kept getting that money. At some point, he potentially should have raised his hand and said, "Stop paying me. I don't work here anymore." But that didn't happen. Money got spent. He says that that's not a fair assessment of the facts. We're waiting to hear from him on that.
Okay.
Why is this significant? He's the guy who has said, "I have this great consulting company, Black Diamond Consulting, LLC. I own the rights to Hartford Football Club, Hartford FC, if you want to give it the European football treatment." And he was the guy who was saying, "Look, we're going to redevelop Dillon Stadium. We're going to build a 15,000 seat stadium. It's going to be state of the art. We're going to bring professional soccer, the North American Soccer League. We're going to bring it right here to Hartford. It's going to be a wonderful community kind of sports team." And now there's cold water on it. Ken Kennedy, who is the member of the city council who was pushing this from day one, who really thought this was going to be good. We were expecting a vote on this in the next couple of weeks on this resolution. And we spoke to him last week, and then we spoke, and he was concerned, and he was saying there may need to be a way out. And then we spoke to Council President Wooden, and he said to us, I have pause over this. I really have pause over this. And now we learned by the end of last week, the stadium, the stadium project and the football team, soccer team coming to Hartford, if it was on life support, it's on its last breath, if you will. And we understand that Ken Kennedy very well may pull the resolution on this stadium. And so for now, the outdoor soccer stadium appears to be dead, which is a blow to Ken Kennedy, some political capital, though he's not running for re-election. A blow to development down there. But, it's worth a mention. The Hartford FC indoor team is going to keep going. Some great news with them. They're going to keep going. They're going to play in the XL Center. They're using the old Dillon Stadium goalposts, which I think is pretty neat. So they're in. But Luke Bronin, the mayoral candidate, has kind of said, "I'm happy we're pumping the brakes on this. This was not a project I necessarily supported. I want to see development, but I want to see it a certain way." He's pumped the brakes on it. And so at this point, Dillon Stadium appears to be on the way out.
Well, even beyond just the Dillon Stadium, what about some legal ramifications? When you read reports that the Hartford Police, I guess, if not the Hartford Police, the Attorney General's office or the U.S. Attorney's office is also going to look into this case. Who's going to be at fault and charges thrown towards those sources? Well,
this is the slippery slope with something like this, where it appeared that maybe he didn't have the backing. And if he worked with some city contractors, this is a big problem. Not sure who may get left holding the bag, but what I can promise you is that my colleagues at the Current probably have a whole bunch of emails and a whole bunch of open source documents that they were able to get their hands on to really say, look, this is what was happening. And there could be some big news coming out in a number of months potentially regarding the stadium project. And then it's also a good question. We've done our own sourcing where it's very possible there might be some other developers in the works. Maybe he sells the lease, the rights to the Hartford FC to somebody else. They come in. A lot of question marks on that project right now.
What about Thomas Della, the city? Was he the director of the development services?
Yes.
Where does he stand at in this whole?
He's kind of been on the sidelines with this, kind of watching it play out, because at the end of the day, the city council is the one who has to make the decision on this. And I actually spoke with Sarah Bronin, the planning and zoning chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and she said, "Look, this isn't our project yet. Just that's not our project yet.
Right.
I mean, we don't answer the question of does he have the cash? Is it is this good for the city, so to speak?
Right.
They're the ones who answer the question of, well, they do answer the question, is it good for the city in its own scope, where they say, is this project consistent with a vision of that property, of that development? That's the question they answer. If it is, they move forward. If it's not, they hit the pause button. So on the development, I think that where we're at right now is that we're hitting pause, and it could be a long time before we see real development down there.
Okay. Let's also jump into this last week about some casino proposal plans, possibly even for the capital city here in Hartford. Where did that whole idea come about?
Well, it seems that there's this old idea that Hartford should be in the conversation about the casino. And, a lot of it goes back even 2 or 3 mayors in this city about talking about a casino. And it's an interesting point, Jonathan, because a little over a week ago, I believe it was about 10 days ago now, the 2 tribes, the Mohegans and the Mashantucket Pequots, announced that they were doing requests for proposals. And we could use our imagination on where the proposals are going to come from.
Right.
East Hartford is probably going to be in the conversation. Windsor Locks will probably be in the conversation. Enfield could be in the conversation.
Yes.
Bridgeport, it sounds like, is out. But the only other major city that's within this 50-mile legal barrier that we understand that MGM's considering, and that where they would want to do it, close to the Springfield Casino, we understand that it would be Hartford.
Right.
Hartford could be the answer. Where it would be is not quite certain. If we're going to talk development and we're going to talk about properties that might need it, I think Colt Park or that area would probably be excluded, because I don't think they'd want to necessarily link a new national park near a gambling facility. I don't know if that's what the federal mission is with the Park Service.
Right.
But I mean, this is a fascinating conversation now about casinos, because I think there's a great question out there: are we really saving jobs? I don't know the answer to that. We've seen some data that says yes, we will. But then there's also this question of, okay, if there are casinos in Eastern New York, because there's going to be one in Schenectady, New York soon. If there's going to be a casino in Springfield, Massachusetts, there's going to be 2 casinos here in Connecticut. There's going to be casinos in Rhode Island. There's going to be a casino out of Boston.
Yes.
Well, is that going to dilute? Is that going to saturate the entire gambling economy? So let's say they were to build a 3rd Connecticut casino in Hartford. How many jobs does it really create? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's a good question about where will that traffic go? And if Hartford becomes a capital city with gambling, then buckle up. That comes with its own that means new infrastructure improvements. That means potentially more police. That means more public works. That's a lot of things that go into it. So that'll be a good wait and see.
Well, then Enfield just rejected some type of proposal plans to have a casino look towards in that particular area.
Enfield is still looking at it. Enfield, from what I understand, they're close. They're from what I understand, a lot of their government people, they don't want it. But then there's some people that look at that mall, the Enfield Square Mall, they look at that and go, that's a golden site right there. We spoke to someone a couple weeks ago, said his mother works in the mall, and he goes, Max, this mall's dead. There's nothing here anymore. Nobody goes to this mall anymore. And that there's some kind of local campaign, if you will, among some of the folks up there who are saying, look, we'll increase the shopping here. We'll make it a go-to destination if we put a casino and a hotel in. I'm not an economist. I don't deal with those things, but I think that's an interesting conversation. What do you do with a facility like that, a mall that's getting hurt by other shopping outlets around? Because you have the Manchester Mall nearby. You have shopping in Windsor. You have shopping in West Hartford and Farmington, New Britain area. How does a mall like that fit in? So with Enfield, it's an interesting conversation about where that's going to end up. I know there are a lot of passionate people up there that the last thing they want to see is a casino, and so that'll be interesting over the next couple of months. Do
you think the people in Hartford or residents in Hartford would be in favor of a casino? I don't know if you weren't here in 1993, but the kind of that plan was. I
was not, but you could look at some demographics of this. Who are the people that spend money at casinos? A lot of the time, it's lower income individuals. There's data to back that up. You will have those whales, so to speak, who show up. They'll do high rollers. They'll play the big games. They'll play $100, $200, $300 a hand, even more, $5,000 a hand in crazy cases. But, I think that would be a big question for Hartford to answer. And if I'm going to go on a limb here. If it was to come before the city council, I have a feeling that two of our mayoral candidates, I think Joel Cruz and Luke Bronin, would not be in favor of a casino.
Yes.
If you were to ask me, I have the feeling, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but just based on the things that they've said, they've kind of said, we have really big problems to fix in Hartford between public safety and education, public resources, the use of them. I don't know if a casino fits into that vision for either of them.
Okay.
So that's my humble take on where we're at right now.
All right. Tomorrow, former mayor of Hartford, Eddie Perez, is going back to court. It's been a very long appeal process that he has been under.
Right.
What will be the whole starting point tomorrow when Eddie Perez goes back to court now? Will this thing be thrown out, or do you have to go back throughout the next couple of months going to court?
You see this all the time. You see this all the time around the country with elected officials who went to prison. They'll appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal. A lot of time that's for a couple of reasons. They have supporters who will help pay their legal fees. There, in a lot of cases, they have the money to do it. And he's in prison for a reason.
Yes.
Right? He's behind bars for a reason. And
well, no, he's not in prison.
Oh, no,
technically, he's not.
Oh, no, he's not. That's right. He's out. He's out on appeal. He's currently out on appeal.
Yes.
I mean, I think the odds of that's right. I was mistaken. I was
thinking of somebody else.
I was thinking of somebody else.
Right, no.
We have a problem with that in this state, there, Jonathan. No, I mean, I think the odds of his conviction getting thrown out are probably slim. I think that does he get a new trial? I think those are things that are very possible. You can still potentially get another trial, maybe, but I think it's going to be very slim, the idea of a federal court kind of throwing out this stuff. That's kind of what I think. So,
well, will we know a lot more tomorrow when he goes to court, or it's going to be a wait and see?
If I'm not mistaken, it's a hearing, so I think it'll probably have to be a wait and see. I don't think we'll see a ruling tomorrow. I don't think we will. But hey, if I'm mistaken, I'm mistaken.
Okay.
So,
you recently came from Alabama.
Yes, sir.
You're a political reporter down there for the past 4 years.
Yes, sir.
What's the political climate comparable from Alabama to Connecticut for people out there who may be unaware?
Red.
So red state, all right.
If Connecticut's blue, as blue as some of the graphics are for your show, they're as red as the Face on Face to Face logo there.
Right.
No, I mean, you're talking about it's one party rule down there, but on the opposite end, it's Republican controlled, and it's a bare bones budget. They don't really pay for many social services the way they pay for them up here. You and I were talking off camera. Connecticut pays for a lot of social services, and they're expensive. Alabama pays for almost none.
Right.
They pay for a very minimal level of state support for anything. They did not expand Medicaid. So you have a group of people down there who have zero access to healthcare. If there are 1 million people currently on Medicaid down there, you probably have 250 to 300,000 who don't have any healthcare coverage whatsoever.
Okay.
So when Mikey or Billy has strep throat, where do they go? The emergency room. And who ends up paying that tab? Local taxpayers pay that tab,
right?
Because the hospitals pay out of their pocket, and then someone has to pay for Medicaid, or they got to pay for the uncompensated care. When you and I go to the emergency room in Alabama, and you and I have insurance, our bill goes up. That's kind of how the math works,
right?
No, and you also have a lot of social issues down there that really are established up here. They're still fighting gay marriage in a lot of cases down there. There's a voter ID law down there where if you're, to be perfectly frank, if you live in some of the poor black belt counties of Alabama, people have heard of the black belt of Alabama, like Selma, Alabama is considered in that, the civil rights beacon. If you're poor and black, you need to get a voter ID somewhere. A lot of times people don't have cars. How do you get somewhere to get your ID if you don't own an automobile?
Right.
And they just closed a bunch of driver's licenses offices down there because they're broke. They don't have any money. So how could people go to a driver's license office to get their driver's license to be able to vote or even drive a car when you have to go 50 miles to a driver's license office now?
Right.
So these are the issues that they're struggling with. But to another point, which is what you made, these are expensive social services Connecticut pays for. They're expensive stuff. That's why a lot of the cases why we have higher taxes in some cases. So they don't want to pay for those down there. So it's a juxtaposition. It's a very different kind of state.
Well, I know it's not the same state in Louisiana and Alabama, but when they had the hurricane in 1995, it kind of awakened a lot of people about the disparities and the poor conditions that a lot of people have.
That's right.
And is it very similar in Alabama?
100%. That's a great comparison. When Katrina hit in 2005, I mean, it really showed you, like the Lower Ninth Ward. The Lower Ninth Ward is it's only, I think, a mile and a half. It's only like a mile and a half square. It's all it is. 1.5 square miles is nothing. It's a small area. One of my first weeks in the job, working in Montgomery, Alabama, Jonathan. I drove out to Wilcox County, Alabama. It has one of the highest unemployment rates in America. It's like 20% unemployment.
Yes.
Something crazy, a nutty statistic. I'm driving out there, and it's a poor African-American county is what it is. And there's been no development. The schools are bad. There's a low tax base. And to be perfectly frank, the way they get their money are people like me who can pay a speeding ticket, people like you who can pay a speeding ticket driving through.
Oh, okay.
That's how they'll make their money. And it's sad. And that's what the state has set a county like that up for. And you drive through and these are tragedies of American life. It almost looks like a third world country. You'll see children walking on dirt roads barefoot. And this is not an exaggeration.
Yes.
To and from school, a mile in many cases, longer. The football teams don't have pads in some cases, or they're sharing. And I wish I was making these things up. I'm not.
But you're not, right.
And they don't have cleats. The biggest cost for a lot of those schools is transportation because the school systems are so large. Whereas here, that is a large cost. But think about it. Meriden public school system is a lot smaller than maybe a huge county is.
Right, right.
So no, Katrina opened up a lot of eyes in this country, to how does the other half live, maybe the other third. And there is truth to it. More needs to be done for it. And these are the people that we talk about when we're talking about social services being cut in a place like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana.
Yes. So even though Connecticut has some tremendous issues, and when you still make a comparison of how the poor people live in Connecticut, it's still better than actually the poor people in the Southeast. That's a great comparison, Jonathan. If you're poor in Connecticut, right, it's a better place to be poor than in the American South. And a lot of places. Right. Florida, I believe, has a bigger social safety net, and I believe Georgia does, but that's not saying much. Right. No, because you don't have access to healthcare. And you better believe that access to healthcare is a reason why a lot of companies are still hesitant to move to the South. Where are my employees going to go to the emergency room? Right. Where are my employees going to, get their flu shot? Where are my employees going to get their knee scoped? These are things that employers think about, which is why, to round it out to part of our conversation earlier, a GE is very hesitant to move to a lot of states like that. That's another one of these larger conversations. But you did mention Atlanta, and a lot of our banking systems are going to Charlotte, North Carolina. Right. How come those two cities are able to excel in the Southeast comparable to other cities? Because they benefit from a lot of things that the rural areas don't. In the big cities, you're going to have still low. It's a lower cost doing business for a number of reasons. The property values. Right. The Bank of America Tower in Charlotte is I'd be willing to bet you the Bank of America Tower there is a cheaper place to do business than the Gold Building here. Right. Or than the Travelers Building here. And I'm saying that only because Connecticut's a more expensive place to live. Right. Property taxes are higher up here than they are down there. And income taxes are still lower down there in many cases. And also a lot of those banks get big corporate tax breaks to move down there. This state has given a lot of corporate tax breaks to your Jackson Labs, your United Technologies, and a couple others out there. Down there, that's kind of their business. Right. We're willing to sacrifice $150 million in tax revenue to get those 500 jobs that are each going to pay. The thing with those incentives is it's a double-edged sword. Do you get more from the overall corporate tax? You get more from the income tax from those 150 employees. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that the decision that a lot of these municipalities make is, we just want to get it from the income tax. So that's what those Atlantas and Charlottes and also Memphises and Nashvilles are benefiting from, or Chattanooga. Chattanooga's home of a Volkswagen plant. Right. That's what they benefit from that the Northeast is struggling with right now. It's identity crisis almost right now. Okay. We're out of time, but is any major stories that's going to be breaking that you can kind of let people know that might happen in the next few days or the few weeks that could be coming up? I think I got a couple of things coming down the pike. I think this budget battle with Governor Malloy, with Democrats and Republicans, I think it's going to be an all-out battle here, a war almost. That's going to remain in the headlines. It's going to remain in the headlines because you're talking about a lot of social services that affect a lot of people. So I think that's out there. You got the Hartford mayor's race that's going to come up. Still coming up. That's coming up, though we just got out of the messy, angry, mean primary season. Right. I don't know how that's all going to shake out with the city council.
It's looking like it's going to be a Joel Cruz, Luke Bronin race. It's fair to assume Luke Bronin probably has the horses to win.
Right.
I think those are the big ones. And then nationally, you have Hillary Clinton going to see the Benghazi committee in a couple of weeks. There are a lot of Hillary supporters in the state. They're going to be watching that closely as well.
What about Joe Biden? Is he going to decide to run, you think?
I don't know. I know that. I mean, what I'll say about that is looking at national politics, tomorrow night's the CNN debate, and it's the first Democratic primary debate. Everyone's going to be on stage. Webb, Sanders, O'Malley, and Clinton. And CNN's giving Biden up until tomorrow night, like up until the moment it begins to get there.
Right.
Well, I don't see why that's a deadline for Joe Biden. You can't convince me that that's a deadline. People have said, oh, he has to get in before then. I don't see why. If he wants to get in on Wednesday, say, I don't like the options, I want to do better. Doesn't that sound better than having to go up against these people when you haven't been necessarily practicing for a debate?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think it's all politics, as it usually is. But I think that I don't know if he'll enter the race, but I don't see why he would need to before tomorrow night. Put it that way.
Okay.
So
that'll be your last words. It was a pleasure
that'll
to
be
have
it.
you on the show.
Thank you,
this morning.
Jonathan. This was wonderful. Thank you very much.
And I wish you the very best of luck with your new position here in the state of
Thank you, sir. And I hope to be on again.
No problem with that. Okay. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed hosting Face to Face this morning with my guest, political reporter for NBC Connecticut, Max Reiss. He sounds like he's very sharp on many different issues, so it's a pleasure to have him on the show this morning. And there's going to be some other programs probably later on throughout the day that you can tune in to accesstv.org. There's going to be other shows throughout the week. I look forward to seeing you this up and coming Wednesday on All About You. And until I see you then, for people out there, have a very peaceful day. Thank you.